What's up, folks? What's new? How's it going? I am Jayme Bedingfield. You are listening to my podcast, Too Many Words. You rock for tuning in. Seriously, those of you that listen regularly and download and share every week, you are dear to my heart. This show of mine is just growing so much over the last several months. Watching the downloads grow is just so cool. And I love to hear from you guys and your thoughts about the episodes. And if you aren't already, you can subscribe to iTunes and add the show on Stitcher and Google Play. And of course, feel more than welcome to hop over to patreon.com/too-many-words and pledge your support for as little as $1 a month. I am really excited to share this episode with you. I have author J.Y. Yang on, and I talked about their novel duology in previous episodes. I can't say enough good things about these novellas. The characters and the world and magic system are just so complex and flawless. So definitely check them out. The Black Tides of Heaven and the Red Threads of Fortune. Just so good. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, let's go right into it. After these notes, I'm here in Seattle. It's 7 p.m. on Friday. You over in Singapore, it's 11 a.m. on Saturday. Is this a form of time travel?
I guess, yes, it is. I am talking to you from the future.
Exactly, and I'm talking to you from the past. The result is we're going to have a podcast that's recorded in two different times.
Time zones are a trip, yeah, when you live on the other side of the planet.
Yeah. Now, are you from around there, or?
No, I am from Singapore. Yeah,
okay.
Like born, bred, raised. Yes.
Yeah, I'm in Seattle now, but I'm originally from the other side of the country. I was the anywhere but here girl.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get that. I mean, I'm hoping to sort of move to Canada in like the next 2 years or so, because it turns out that you can actually move to Canada as a self-employed person. So my goal is to move into writing full time and sort of like emigrate to Canada and like be closer to everyone else and not be like, half a day ahead and always be like, oh, I don't know what time it is over there.
Yeah, no, that's a significant time difference. By far the most I've ever done on the show. I think before you, it was England, which is 8 hours ahead, which is tricky also.
Yeah, I feel like 8 hours is a bit trickier than like 12 hours. 16 hours, I think, is the worst, which actually you're 16 hours because I think like the East Coast is closer to me.
Yeah.
By about 3 hours or something like that. Because like I will be talking to someone on the West Coast, but I'll forget they're on the West Coast, and I'll be like, is it 4 a.m. where you're there? And they're just like, no, it just turned midnight and I don't sleep until like 2 a.m. So I'm like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah, no, I was a little bit worried on my end because Friday night is usually like I'm half zombie at this point. My weeks are long.
God.
So I had a peppermint mocha at like 4:30 just to make sure that I had enough pep.
Yeah, so hopefully when I do move, it will be easier to conduct like interviews and stuff like this as well. It's one of the perks.
I don't know. Location is it's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately. Mm-hmm. I live in a very densely populated little corner, and I just find myself just lusting for woods and quiet.
Yeah. I mean, like I lived in Norwich in England for a year, which is like this sort of like really tiny little town in Norfolk, and it's a university town. But I lived on campus, and the campus basically borders this sort of like, they call it an ancient forest because it's never been developed. So it's been there since like the start of time, and it's really nice. They had a lake, and like they had like little walking paths that you could go through the forest, and it was so nice. I would just go there every day. And now I'm back in Singapore, which is like is a country that's about, I think, like 20 miles wide and 12 miles across. It's like tiny. It's like really tiny, and 6 million people live here.
Wow.
And I just feel like I miss the nature. I miss being in a small town that, quiet and yeah.
Yeah, I want to be able to look up at the sky at night and see the stars.
Yeah.
And not like the spotlights coming off the highway that's dealing with some car dealership.
Yeah.
I want to hear.
I mean, I guess I'm fairly lucky in that Singapore, we like the government, when they sort of like planned the layout of Singapore, they were very sure to make sure that we had like trees and stuff everywhere, except that we're in the tropics, so like our nature is an asshole. Like literally every insect will attack you. It is terrible. Like I can sit in my room and I will get attacked by mosquitoes. I will pick up like 30 bites in like half an hour because they're just like assholes, and I'll just be like, okay, I like the nature but not tropical nature, because tropical nature is an asshole.
Yes.
So, it's terrible. I mean, at least I guess I'm not in Australia, which is like worse, and also would be like the biggest time difference if you ever interview anybody from Australia, because they're like 3 hours ahead of me, or 5, depending on which part of Australia it's in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and New Zealand too, right? Because I was actually looking into talking to somebody from New Zealand, and it was just really difficult to find a time that worked for both of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Like New Zealand is like one of the first, I think they're 5 hours ahead of us. And like, yeah, every time, like, New Year, they're one of the first people to sort of like celebrate the New Year as well. Yeah.
So I read both the Red Threads of Fortune and the Black Tides of Heaven, and I just enjoyed them so much.
Thank you.
I love so much about them, and I love that it's a duology and it follows twins. And the complication of family, and that just kind of radiates through both of them. And I read the first. I read them twice. I read them, I read them first. The Black Tides of Heaven first, and then the Red Threads of Fortune, and then I went back and I read the Red Threads of Fortune and then the Black Tides of Heaven. And I think it's so cool that you can read them in either order.
That's actually interesting, because I think I literally just had like this conversation on Twitter, because a couple of people were trying to sort of read the novellas for the first time, and they were like, which one do I start with first? And it's interesting because like I really don't have an answer for that because the backstory of it is that I wrote Red Threads first, and it was meant to be a standalone with like a certain amount of backstory in it. And I kind of like, when I sold it to Tor.com, I told them that I do have ideas for more novellas. I have the idea for sort of like a prequel novella, and then like that's kind of when my agent came in and he's like, oh, you said you had like an idea for a second novella, which is a prequel. Do you have like a synopsis of it? Because like he's like, oh, it doesn't make sense to like just sell one novella to them. We might as well sell two, package them together. And so I kind of like wrote up a short synopsis of what would eventually become Black Tides, and then Tor was like, great, we'll take both. And as an interesting publishing experiment, we're going to release them both on the same day. And I was like, oh, cool, I love experiments. And then like when that actually happened, everyone was just like, okay, so which one do I read first? And I was like, I actually have no idea, because like, I met people to just read Red Threads alone and then like read Black Tides as a prequel when it would come out eventually. But then like, since they're being released together, it doesn't make sense to read the one that's like chronologically like after the other first. So I was just like, Black Tides is sort of like a more, I think, gentle introduction to the world, because you sort of like slowly learn how the world works through the eyes of Akeha as he's growing up and like sort of finding his place in the world, whereas Red Threads just throws you straight into the action, and you're just like so like flailing and trying to figure out like what's going on. And I guess like it depends on which style of storytelling you prefer. I guess like I know that like Red Threads has like a stance including my agent, who's like, no, I love it because it throws you straight into the action, and it's so fast paced, and I like it better, and people should start reading from it. Whereas some people are just like, Black Tides is better because it sort of like lets you into the world gently, and it kind of explains the whole gender thing that's not really touched upon so much in Red Threads, except like like obliquely. So yeah, it's been interesting seeing who prefers like reading which novella first, because I think like there's the people who started with either and they all have their opinions on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't really, I don't know that I could pick one that I prefer starting, because I really enjoyed I really enjoyed Black Tides. That story is told over a longer period of time than Red Threads. But Red Threads, you have so much action and emotion, and then the backstory that's in Black Tides, it adds so much. But separately, I mean, they're such strong stories. I really am just crazy about them both.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad. I kind of conceive them as sort of very different types of novellas as well. Because Red Threads is definitely kind of like one of those action movies. It takes place over 3 days. It's very fast. It's a very sort of contained storyline. Whereas I saw Black Tides. It's more like those a long-running serial family drama. So it takes place over like 38 years, and have like these glimpses into like different parts of the protagonist's lives. So to me, they were like very different novellas in that they were sort of like different genres to begin with. If that makes sense.
Definitely.
And I think for like the series, I'm trying to sort of like do a different genre or do a different thing for each of the novellas I'm writing. I have one that's coming out later this year, which is like called The Descent of Monsters. I think we're actually sticking with the title because I haven't thought of a different one yet, which is sort of like an epistolary kind of like crime thriller thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then like the fourth book that I have, which I think will probably come out next year. I haven't started writing it yet. I haven't started plotting it. But it will sort of be like a drunken monologue.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I just try. I think at this point, I'm just sort of trying like different things to do with the novella format, which is I think kind of flexible in that you have a lot more to play with than with just a novelette or a short story. But at the same time, it's short enough that you can kind of experiment with it in a way that it will be more difficult to do with a novel, because like you're just like you have to put so much more into a novel, and like if you get it wrong, it's like it's going to take up more of your time to just redo the whole thing or trunk it entirely. So I think it's like novellas to me are like a space where you have sort of like the freedom to experiment, because it's like it's not such a huge commitment. At the same time, you also have enough like sort of space in your sandbox to just play around with different things. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I was gonna bring that up because I've never written in novella form, but I'm working on a beast of a book at the moment, and short stories, and there's so many differences there, and I was curious where novellas played in with that, because it is fun how different formats they allow, like you said, they allow for different things, for experimentation and format and stuff that some of the short stories I have in the works right now, I would never want to write an entire book about them, because that would suck. But in 4,000 words, it works.
Yeah, it's really strange because so I started off as a short story writer, and people were like, "Oh, you're so good at writing short stories," but I realized that I didn't kind of understand what made a short story until I started trying to write more long form stories, and then I realized it's only after I stopped like writing short stories that I kind of realized like what a short story should be. as an inverse to like what I'm trying to do for like more long form writing, because right now I'm just kind of writing like novellas, and I'm trying to write a novel, and I think it's only after I kind of like started writing for like different formats that I realized that, you know, there are certain stories that really only can be told as short stories, and you can, yeah, as you said, you can't really expand them into something longer, because that would suck, because like the expectations of like, you know, what you have to put in terms of story and character and things that happen are different for a short story and like a novel and a novella. I mean, right now I tend to think of short stories as kind of more high concept in a way. Like you have a certain very specific thing you want to say, and then you say it kind of in the very kind of confined space of short story. Whereas like with a longer form thing, which is like a novella or novel, that you don't actually have to say just one thing. Um, and you can do like a lot more with the narrative. You can have like, you know, overarching themes. You can have multiple themes, and they can all kind of like dovetail with each other. Yeah, there's
Yep.
just like so much more you can do with it. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, like, which is funny because I do remember one thing when I first read Threads. One of the things that my agent proposed to me was like, because at the time, both of these novellas are actually pretty long. They're like, uh, I think Black Tides is literally like 39,600 words, which
Yeah.
is just like, you know, at the edge of like the novella category. And I think Red Threads is like 38,000 words, so they're both pretty long. And my agent was just like, you know, why don't you expand Red Threads a little, and then we'll kind of like, you know, sell it as a novel, like a full length novel. And I was just like, I don't want to, because I didn't feel that there was enough in Red Threads to sort of make it a novel. And he was just like, okay. It's very interesting, because like there's so much in this. I just want to see, you know, I'm interested to know now what you think constitutes enough of a story to make a novel. And kind of just like starting on a novel right now. I'm planning it, and I've told him about it. I was just like, I'll send you the outline by the end of the month. And I was just like, this is going to be at least 150,000 words. Oh god, yeah. So I guess like my conception of what makes a story, it's kind of different from people, because I like packing a lot of shit into my stuff, I guess. On the other hand, also, I have discovered that I've completely forgotten, or like I have no idea how to write a short story now, because like I've been trying to write a short story like the whole of 2017. I tried to write short stories, and they just ended up being not short stories. One of them ended up being like a novelette. Another one of them ended up being like a straight up novella. Like it was like 35,000 words by the time I finished with it. I was like, okay. I was like, I can finish this with 5,000 words. No.
No, totally. Actually, it's funny that you say that, because
God.
just today, this short story, this concept, these characters have been bugging me for just ever, and I've been putting it down and coming back, and I thought I was on the trail with it, and I'm sitting with it today, and I was just like, damn it, I think this is a book.
Yeah, like, you know, sometimes you're just like, it's gonna be a short story, and like, you know, you start plotting out, and then you're like, you add things, and you're just like, I'm gonna be able to finish this in 5,000 words, and you write like the first 3 beats, and you're like, I'm already at 4,500 words, and I still have like, you know, 7/8 of the story left to write.
Yep. Yeah, and then you get 6/8 through the way, and you're like, oh, there's this whole other thing that I didn't discover earlier that I want to play with.
Yeah, and you're like,
Mhm.
yeah. So I think one of the things I'm trying to do this year is also sort of like reconnect with like short stories, and try to write actual short stories. And I do owe, like, I've already committed to writing a bunch of short stories for like editors. So I'm like, so I think I finally come up with like stories that can be contained within like a 3,000 word kind of, you know, structure, which is funny because I think like previously I would have probably just written these as flash pieces. But I've begun to sort of like understand like what makes something a short story and what makes something not a short story, and then it will expand into something that I can't keep control of.
Well, it's so I mean, it's still wild to me how what starts out as an idea that you feel very much in control of, it grows and changes. It's and I'm still not used to it because I just think it's so cool and amazing how it works like that.
Yeah, especially since I'm very much a plotter when it comes to writing. In that I cannot start like actually writing sentences until I have figured out where exactly the story is going. Which is a problem for the novel because it's so huge that I've actually started putting down words without actually knowing like where the rest of the story is going, just so that I get a sense of what I want to do with the tone and setting and character. And it's the most terrifying thing ever because I'm pretty sure I'm gonna delete like most of this by the time I actually figured out what I want the story to be. And it is true because even as I'm writing, I think I'm like 20,000 words into it. Like, okay, less than that. I think about 15,000 words into it. And I have already sort of like developed an aspect of world building, which when I look at it, I know I'm going to have to go back and scrap like the majority of the 15,000 words I already have down because I just kind of fundamentally sort of like changes the background of one of the main characters I'm writing about. I'm like, shit, but I
Yeah.
guess in something as massive and undertaking as a novel, 15,000 words is nothing. Just throw it out. It's just like that was a warm up exercise.
Yeah.
The actual thing will come later.
Totally. No, I'm
God.
nearing the end of a massive rewrite right now.
Oh.
About 110,000 words. The high fantasy adventure. I wrote it in the first person and decided that it needs to be in the third person.
Oh boy.
So every word is, it's like it's drafting, but it's not because I already have the story. So it's like it feels like drafting, but it also feels like the worst revisions ever.
Yeah, because you basically have to rewrite it,
Oh
like,
yeah.
don't you? Because it's so different writing first person and third person. Yeah.
Yeah, well the perspective's
Oh,
totally different. So like, I'm a
yes.
lot of the scenes and the actions are the same, but it's in a totally different package.
Yeah. Wow, that is such an intense revision.
It,
Wow, I admire that. Good luck with finishing it. Oh my
Thank
god.
you. Yeah, I know. I had to gut check myself so many times because like it wasn't working. I felt like I was banging my head against the wall. And then
Yeah.
I went to write a short story and ended up writing the first chapter of this book in third person and everything started clicking. But then I was just like, Jayme, are you just deciding to do the most difficult thing possible just because you like to make things difficult for yourself, or is this like really what you need to do? So I put it in a drawer and I walked away from it, and then yeah, no, that's what I needed to do.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes that's just what the story requires, I think. And I think high fantasy does lend itself a lot to like third person rather than first person. Yeah, I think N.K. Jemisin that had this world building sort of a tutorial in which she was like, the further out you get from our like daily experience, the further out your narrative tends to be. So if you're doing something that's like contemporary or just like very near future and it's very relatable, it's easier to do first person than if you do it set in the secondary world on another planet where they have more gravity or a third gender and things that are like so radically different from what we're used to. I think partially it's also because like it's a lot harder to gracefully build exposition into a first person narrative because
Yeah.
like if it's first person, like why would you think about all these like explaining things? You don't write a Wikipedia sort of like narrative in your own head as you're going through life. So it's very much more difficult to do like exposition that doesn't stick out as like a sore thumb in first person. So yeah, first person is actually something that I only started experimenting with like recently. I've always more been like a close third kind of writer, but I've been like trying to do first person with some of my shorter pieces, which has been interesting. It's a very different, I think, sort of narrative style as well, because like it's just so immediate and it's like so much more weirdly emotional, I think. But yeah.
No, definitely. You know, and like you were talking about with like, the fantasy genres and the exposition, it's really,
Hmm.
when shit's hitting the fan and you're in first person, it's like, I found it very difficult to paint the picture appropriately because it's like,
Hmm.
it doesn't feel realistic. If I'm in the middle of a
Right.
battle with all these different, I'm going to be very much focused on what's happening to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, that's the thing about first person is always it's kind of a very limited perspective because we are creatures with a limited perspective. As much as like we like to think that we're all like detached and aloof and super observant, but it is still a very limited perspective. Whereas like with third person, you can sort of like you have the creative license to sort of like expand yourself a little. Yeah. For my current novel, I'm not just like doing third person, but like a multiple point of view third person kind of thing, which is exciting, but also kind of terrifying because like there are so many more things to juggle when like you're jumping from like place to place, from head to head, and but it's also interesting because like then you can do things where you actually can have different points of view, sort of like analyzing the other point of view, like so you jump from one person's head to like another person's head, and the second person is kind of like looking at the first person that you were like sort of in the head of, but from an outsider's perspective. So that's kind of interesting to write, that you're writing from one person's perspective and then you get to see someone else's perspective of that person, if that even makes sense. Oh
No,
my
no,
god.
no, it totally does that. Well, that's totally what I mean, I'm doing. It's third person, but I have four POVs.
Yeah, yeah, it's super fun, but it's also a lot of work
It
because
is.
then you have to sort of like juggle all the different relationships from like different points of view. Yeah.
No, totally.
So.
I've been using index cards recently to try to organize my characters in that way. So like I know where I'm going, but there's some parts where I've been kind of, figuring out how I get there and following the characters. And there was this one chunk where it was kind of like, I don't know, it was getting pretty dubious. And I took out index cards and started just organizing arcs
Hmm.
that way, and kind of, I'm a person with my hands, so this way I can kind of like slide them around and see how they
Right.
play. And I found that to just loosen some things up. I have to play tricks on myself sometimes. I have to start writing in a purple pen just so that my brain's like, oh, now I can have this idea.
I haven't actually sat down and started doing like very detailed arts because I'm still kind of like building the world from the ground up. So like I have like vague ideas of like where the arcs are going and what's going to happen, but I haven't concretized everything yet. But I think I actually do need to go the index card way because like it's such a huge narrative, and I tend to do these on paper, and then I'll just like draw little boxes and then like draw lines between the boxes. But I have a feeling that that's just not gonna fly for something as massive as like 150,000 word novels. So I'm like, yeah, I probably have to do the index card thing, and then like probably lose the index card, or like my dog gets it, and I'm like, ah. So,
One thing that I really enjoyed about Red Threads and Black Tides is the use of magic and science and technology.
mm-hmm.
That was totally badass.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I kind of, I'm a scientist by training, so like I kind of need my magical systems to sort of like make logical sense to me. So what eventually happens is that even when I try to sort of like create a magical system, they usually end up being like really systematic and kind of scientific in a sense. So like, I mean, like for the magic system I created for the Tensorate novellas, they're partly based on like the 5 element system, like the Eastern sort of like 5 element system, which is sort of different from the West, which has like 4 elements. But also each of the elements, I connected it to like an actual sort of like physical type of energy. So like, like Earth energy is gravitational energy. What are the other elements? Water energy is kinetic energy. Fire is like thermal energy. Metal is like electromagnetic energy, and I think I called it force energy in the book.
Yeah, I think you did too.
And that was like biochemical energy. So it's like that those were the principles I was working on, and it also, and so like when people actually sort of do magic, it actually has to sort of like follow a certain pattern that makes sense in the physical world. I'm glad people like the magic system. Like people ask me quite a bit about it, and I'm like, oh, let me explain to you like the pattern in my conception of the magic system, and I like explained it like to people a lot. But I never get sick of explaining it. It's like fun. I was like, yes, let me show you how like clever or not I was with this thing.
No, very clever. I think that's what really struck me is it stood out a lot as far as like compared to other magic systems, and sometimes magic isn't explained at all. It's just magic and sparkles when people use it. And I just really and I liked the term slack.
Yeah, I think that was just an idea that I sort of came off with, like pulling on things as I think like as a sort of like a counterpoint to the language of using magic as tensing, right? So you have something that's kind of slack, and then you put tension in things, and that's how you sort of like pull the strings of the world, I think. Which is funny because like I kind of conceived this I think in January of 2016, but it sounds too close, but it's probably January 2016. And then I got my first invite to sort of like a Slack channel in like May of that year, and I was like, it's called what? It was so funny because like I think I just finished like the first draft of Red Threads, and I was just be like, it's called what? I've just been dealing with this, for the past few months of my life. Yeah, because like people thought that I was actually making a reference to Slack, and I was just like, no, it was just like the other way around. I came up with this before like Slack was a thing in my life, and I was like, what?
Well, I like that it was in the place of just using the word magic or something like that, and it in general the way you describe the usage of magic there, I really like a lot because it can be difficult. Like some of the stuff that I'm editing through right now, it's when you're dealing with magic, it's very easy to almost over describe it. I mean, I have like I just would go off, and it's like, okay, well, they got the point. They didn't need all that.
Yeah, I guess for me, I was very conscious of the fact that like I was working with a very limited word limit. Like I really, really did not want to go over the 40,000 word limit. So I was just like, you have a lot of left to write, so just like go sparing with like the details on how the magic system works. As long as you understand how it works. Like if you can explain it to an editor, if they get confused, they can probably think of a better way to express things. So I was just like, I will be as sparing as I need with the sort of like descriptions of how the magic system works. And I guess like it kind of works, I guess, because like people are just like, oh, I love the magic system. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely works. And then and you have the book that's coming out, you mentioned at the beginning. That's in the same world, correct?
It is set in the same world. It's sort of set further on in the timeline. Like so basically it deals with sort of like 2 sets of timelines. I think there's a bunch of stuff that happens in the present, which is set I think like a year-ish after the end of Red Threads, and then there's stuff, but it deals with stuff that has like happened previously, because it's like it's an investigation into stuff that started happening about like 20 years ago. So that was interesting. Yeah, there you will see familiar characters from the first two novellas, but the protagonist is someone whom you've never met before. So that's exciting.
That is exciting. I'm excited. And the covers are amazing.
Yeah, I am so lucky that like Tor like picked like the perfect cover artist for the series. Like Yuko Shimizu's work is like, it's just so amazing. I think like the first time I saw the covers for Black Tides and Red Threads, it was actually pretty far out from when the books were actually released, because like they got, I mean, they commissioned the covers early because they already had an idea of what the books would be about. But the thing is that at that time I hadn't really written Black Tides, so they needed to give me time to sort of write Black Tides and then for it also to go through like the production process. So like the covers were ready like way before the books, and so I sat on those covers for like 6 months before they were like officially announced. So I was just like, oh yeah, because it was so, when I first like wrote the novellas, I didn't have any idea of what I wanted for the covers, except I just wanted them to be fantastic, and they really just surpassed my expectations in every way. I was just like, the first time I saw them, I just kind of like died low. Like, I couldn't believe they were real. I was like, they're so amazing.
Yeah, no, they really are. Well, I think it was I found out about them. Kat Howard tweeted out and with the covers and everything, and I was just, and in general, if she recommends something, I pretty much know that I'll like it. And then
Kat Howard is so amazing. She is so amazing. Anyway, sorry, Tiny Friend, go.
Oh no,
I just love
she's
her
awesome.
writing. Her writing is so amazing.
Oh, it is. Did you read Unkindness of Magicians?
I'm actually like, it's literally like on my desk right in front of me, because like I've read like the first chapter, but like I am a little. I'm a terrible person. I have like bookmarks and I think like 16 different books at one point at the moment, and I'm just like reading a chapter of each. But yeah, I've started reading it and I already love it. Like just from the first page, I was like, whoo!
Yeah.
Yeah, I am so excited to sort of like get to the end of it, which I have to like in the next couple of months or so. I'm really trying to get through my insurmountable TBR. I call it Mount TBR because I just keep buying. I buy like 4 books a month, and I can only read about one because I'm like such a slow reader, and I just like, which just means that I have a never-ending pile of books that keeps growing and growing because I just never clear it fast enough.
Oh, I hear you. No, same here. I constantly, and it's like I need to buy a bookshelf so bad, and I keep buying books and I don't buy the bookshelf, and now like my desk is starting to look like a book castle.
Yeah, I literally, because I'm working off my laptop at the moment, because it's easier to plug like headphones into my laptop than like my actual desktop. And I literally had to clear like 2 piles of books off my desk to fit the laptop. I was like, all right, put these on my bed.
Yeah. I know. Well, I wish that I could just like, I don't know, have like, I don't know. For a while, I used to like say that like I wish I could just like touch a book and the story or the information is just transported into my head. But I actually do enjoy the act of reading. But I wish that there was like, you know, some sort of parallel universe that like while you're reading, time in the actual world stops so you can just read and then you can.
Yes.
Yeah. Although I would abuse that terribly, probably.
I like, if you gave me the superpower to stop time, I would just stop time and then like read an entire book and then start time going again. I'll just like go back to do whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, take a bubble bath, freeze everything.
I'm just like read. Okay. Oh my god, that's so good. I wish. No, now I'm sad I don't have that superpower, because I would just be like, damn.
Yes.
That is the way. That is the only way I'll get through Mount TBR if I had the ability to stop time, but I don't, and now I'm sad.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's so many good books in the world. Oh my
There
god.
is. I know. But yes, that book is amazing.
I am so looking forward to finishing it. Oh my god.
But yeah, like I said, so she tweeted about your books and the covers. I was just
Mhm.
like, wow.
Yeah,
You
I know.
must have just been
I
thrilled.
yeah, I feel like I am so lucky because I feel like, well, I'm pretty sure that 90% of the reason why the books got so much like buzz before they were released is that people were really just so excited about the covers. They were like, "Oh, they're so pretty! I now want to read the books." So the
Well, I
whole thing
mean,
about not judging books by the covers. Sometimes people do that. Sometimes they do.
well, yeah, I mean, I will look past a cover that I don't think that is fetching, but I mean, definitely, I'll see a cover that has a certain vibe to it, and it will draw me.
Yeah, so I am so lucky to be working with the team at Tor.com, and like I'm so lucky that they put so much faith into my books, and got the right artists and put them in the right place, to put the book publicity in the right places. Yeah, like
That's
I'm so
awesome.
lucky. Yeah.
That's really cool.
And yeah, I just like, the whole sort of like releasing two books at once. I think it made people sort of like just sit up and take a look because it was unusual that you had like two books by the same author in the same series and they were like coming out on the same day. And people were like, oh, why didn't you combine them into one book and release it as a novel? And I was just like, they're like two completely separate stories. It's just that we decided to put them on the same day, and I think that kind of like gets people's attention because like it's just unusual. And they were like, maybe I should check out what these books are about and why they're being released this way, which is
Definitely.
interesting.
No, yeah, that
Yeah.
got my attention too because I'd seen the books together in the image, and I thought it was like an upcoming series. One was out and one wasn't, and then when I saw them, they were coming out together. I was like, oh, that is interesting. What's that about?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like there was a whole bunch of factors, but it's just mostly I've just been really really lucky.
That's awesome. Well, could you tell everybody who's listening where they can find your work and your site and social media and all that?
I guess I mean like I website is jyang.com and it has a list of like my short stories and I guess like the novellas you can just find them
Yeah.
by googling them on Amazon or something or on Tor's site. I am mostly on Twitter these days. I don't use Facebook. I'm on Twitter as Hallelujah, which is HALLEYANG. And that's where you can find me. And then I have a newsletter that's like sort of linked, I think, on my website as well. And if you sign up for that, then you'll get like periodic reminders, like once every quarter. Like all the announcements that I will obviously have put on Twitter, but Twitter is just this river that if you're not in it when something goes past, you miss it.
Yep.
So like like the newsletter is where you will catch up on everything that you miss out because people need to work and sleep and eat and shower and things like that are not being on Twitter.
Well,
Yeah.
I've been trying to like make a point to pay attention to how much I'm on Twitter because it can get away from you, and then it's like, well, what have I just spent the last hour looking at? What am I doing?
I know. I'm honestly trying to cut down on social media this year. This is like one of my 2018 resolutions because like I spend like 90% of like 2017 on social media. It feels like just refreshing and looking at the news and like getting horribly depressed about the future of humanity. So I'm just like, you know what? This year I'm just gonna focus on like doing the work and come what may, being on Twitter is not going to change the outcome of things because I don't have the power to change the outcome of things, and definitely not by refreshing Twitter like 10 times a minute. That's just like it's just damaging to your own mental health for no good reason whatsoever. So yeah, I kind of like try to cut out Twitter a bit more.
Totally. No,
This year.
I've been doing the same thing because it's just paying attention to my anxiety levels, and I'm like all stressed out, and it's like, well, what have you been reading for the last 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Go for a walk.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I had so much fun chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on the show and like chatting with me about all this random things that come into my head. I really had fun, just chatting with you for the past what was it, hour?
About that, yeah, I'm glad. I've had fun too. All right, folks, that's wrapping it up for this week. You know the deal. Follow me on Twitter at me Bedingfield and the show at Too Many Words Pod. Go to the site tmwpod.com and of course visit patreon.com/too many words. I'll talk to you next week with YA author and literary agent Eric Smith. Until then, over and out.